I signed the adoption papers for my wife's son out of love. Soon after, she filed for divorce, and I discovered my love for them came with a price. Before we go on, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us which city you're tuning in from. My wife asked me to legally adopt the son she had with her ex, because according to her, the boy already saw me as his father and deserved stability. I loved him. I agreed to start the process and signed important documents. Shortly after, she asked me for a divorce. When I checked dates and messages, I understood that I hadn't just signed as a father. I had signed right before she tried to secure my financial responsibility and get closer to the man she said she no longer wanted in her life. The worst part wasn't discovering that my wife had lied to me. The worst part was looking at the child and understanding that my love for him was real, even though the story his mother had built around that love was full of calculations, because Lucas wasn't to blame. That's what broke me in two from the beginning. He hadn't designed anything. He hadn't manipulated dates. He hadn't hidden messages. He hadn't spoken to lawyers behind my back. Lucas was just a child who sought me out when he was scared, who asked for my help with his math homework, who fell asleep on the sofa waiting for me to come home from work, who one night asked me if signing a paper meant I could never leave again. And I, who thought I was giving him security, ended up discovering that his mother was using that same security as a net before letting me go. My name is Daniel. When all started, I was 38 years old. I worked as a logistics coordinator in a transportation company. It wasn't a fancy job, but it was stable. Long hours, calls at any time, routes that fell apart midday, impatient clients and drivers who sometimes got lost or pretended to be lost so they wouldn't be on time. I lived tired, but I didn't complain too much. I had a house to pay for, a marriage I thought was solid, and a child who, although he didn't carry my blood, occupied a huge place in my life. I met Mariana when Lucas was 4 years old. She didn't introduce me to her son right away. I liked that. She said she didn't want to bring men into the child's life without being sure. I respected that. In fact, I appreciated it because I always thought a child shouldn't have to pay for the adult's doubts. During the first few months, Mariana and I would go out when Lucas was with his grandmother or his biological father. His father's name was Esteban. At that time, according to Mariana, Esteban was irregular, but not completely absent. He would show up some weekends, promise things, cancel others, send money when he could, and then disappear for weeks. I don't want Lucas to think that anyone who dates me is going to stay. I think that's fine. It doesn't bother you. It would bother me more if you brought him into this before you were ready. She looked at me as if that answer had been important. You're different. Now, when I remember that phrase, I wonder if she said it because she believed it or because she already knew what kind of man she needed by her side. The first time I saw Lucas was at a park. Mariana said it wasn't a formal introduction, that she was just going to stop by to say hello. He was on the swings in a green t-shirt with his shoelaces untied. He looked at me with distrust, the way children look when they've already seen adults appear and disappear. Hi, Lucas. I'm Daniel. I didn't get too close. I didn't offer him gifts. I didn't try to win him over with forced jokes. He watched me and was direct. You're my mom's friend. Yes. Are you going to come around a lot? Mariana tensed up. I didn't answer quickly. I don't know, but if I do, I'll say hello properly. Lucas thought for a second. Okay. And he went back to the swing. That was our first agreement. If I showed up, I'd say hello properly. No more, no less. Over time, I started seeing him more. First short dinners, then outings with the three of us, then afternoons at Mariana's house while he did his homework and we talked about normal things. I didn't try to fill a role, I just was. When Lucas first asked me to open a juice for him because his mom was busy, I felt something strange, a small trust. When he asked me to adjust his helmet before riding his bike, I felt another. When one night he fell asleep in the back seat and Mariana asked for my help to carry him up, I carried him carefully and he, half asleep, rested his head on my shoulder. He's heavier than he looks, I whispered. Mariana smiled. And he wakes up if you make noise. He didn't wake up. I tucked him into his bed and took off his shoes. He mumbled something I didn't understand. Mariana looked at me from the doorway with a tenderness that at that moment seemed like love to me. 2 years into our relationship, Mariana and I got married. Lucas was 6. He didn't call me dad at the wedding. I never asked him to. In fact, before we got married, I sat down with him at the kitchen table and spoke to him clearly. Lucas, your mom and I are getting married. That means I'm going to live with you guys, and we're going to be a family, but you don't have to call me dad if you don't want to. He moved a toy car between his hands. So what do I call you, Daniel? That's fine. What if one day I want to call you something else? I swallowed. That's fine too. My dad is going to be mad. The question reminded me that in a child's life, everything has adult consequences. That's for the adults to talk about. You don't have to take care of anyone's feelings. He looked at me. Mom says that. Your mom is right about that. Lucas continued to call me Daniel for a long time, and that was fine. I didn't want to earn a title. I wanted to earn his trust. Esteban, the biological father, continued to appear irregularly. There were good months where he would pick up Lucas 2 Saturdays in a row and even send messages asking about school. Then came months of silence. He would promise to take him to the movies and cancel because he had work. He would promise to go to a game and not show up. He would promise to buy him soccer shoes and then say he was short on money. I had one rule: never speak ill of Esteban in front of Lucas. Not because Esteban deserved it, because Lucas did. Once after Esteban canceled a visit for the 3rd time, Lucas sat on the floor of his room and started tearing labels off a toy box. He's not coming. Mariana was pacing back and forth with the phone in her hand. Your father always does the same thing. I looked at her. Mariana. She bit her tongue. Lucas wasn't crying. That worried me more. There are children who, when they get tired of crying, start to store their disappointments like stones. I sat on the floor, not too close. Do you want to do something today? Don't you want me to stay here? He shrugged his shoulders. Whatever you want, I stayed. For 20 minutes, we didn't talk. He tore labels. I sorted pieces of a puzzle. Then he asked a question that wasn't from a small child, even though it came out of his mouth. Are you going to leave too when you promise something? I felt that question wasn't for just any adult. It was a door. I'm going to try not to promise things I can't keep. That doesn't answer. He was right. If I promise you something, I'm going to do everything I can to keep it. And if I can't, I'll tell you beforehand. I won't leave you waiting without an answer. He looked at me. That does answer. That day we put together half a puzzle. I didn't fix the wound Esteban had left, but I didn't make it bigger. Sometimes that's the only thing one can do. The years passed, and my place in Lucas's life was formed by actions. I took him to the doctor when he had a high fever, and Mariana was in a work meeting. I stayed with him all night, changing cloths, taking his temperature, checking that he was breathing calmly. At 3 a.m, he opened his eyes and whispered my name. Daniel, I'm here. Don't tell Mom I cried. You didn't cry. You had a fever. That doesn't count. He smiled slightly and went back to sleep. I went to school meetings. At first, some teachers would look at me waiting for me to explain who I was. I would say the same thing every time. I'm Mariana's husband. I'm authorized for Lucas's matters. Over time, they stopped asking. I paid for swimming lessons when Esteban said he would help and then didn't send anything. Mariana was upset, but resigned. You don't have to do it. Lucas wants to learn, but it's not your obligation. Not everything one does for a child has to start as an obligation. She hugged me. That's why he loves you. I didn't answer, but that phrase stayed with me. I taught him to ride a bike without training wheels. He shouted at me not to let go. I let go because he could do it, but I ran alongside him so he would think I was still holding on. When he realized he was moving on his own, he braked badly and fell on the grass. He got up with tears of fear and pride. I did it. You did it. See? Of course I saw. That afternoon Esteban called on video call, and Lucas told him. Esteban smiled from the screen. That's great, champ. I was going to teach you that one day. Lucas didn't know what to answer. Neither did I. On his 8th birthday, Esteban promised to come with a big gift. He didn't arrive. He didn't call either. Lucas spent the afternoon looking at the door. Mariana tried to distract him with cake. I organized a game with the kids. In the end, when everyone left, Lucas sat next to me. You knew he wasn't coming. No, but you thought it might happen. Lying to him would have been worse. Yes. Then thanks for staying. He didn't say more. That thank you hurt me more than if he had called me dad, because it wasn't a word of emotion, it was a word of survival. At 9 years old, he started calling me dad by accident. The first time was on a Tuesday, leaving school. He was distracted. He got in the car and spoke without thinking. "Dad, can I go to Bruno's house?" We both froze. He turned red. "Daniel, I meant Daniel." I felt my heart pound in my chest, but I didn't make a scene. I understood you. Bruno already asked his mom for permission. Lucas looked out the window, grateful that I didn't turn the mistake into an event. For months, he continued to alternate. Daniel in public. Dad when he was tired, scared, or distracted. I never corrected him, nor did I show off. It was his, not mine. Mariana did notice. Sometimes she would smile with tears. "He chose you. Don't say that in front of him." "Why?" "Because I don't want him to feel like he has to choose between adults." She would nod, but then she would say similar things again. Over time, Mariana started talking more about legal security. At first, they were loose comments. At school, they asked me again for Esteban's authorization for a field trip. He gave it. After 3 days, as always. Another night, while we were reviewing medical insurance, she asked something that seemed casual. "Do you know that if there's an emergency and I'm not here, legally things can get complicated sometimes? I'm authorized at school and the doctors." For some things, yes. For others, no. I looked at her. "Where are you going with this?" "No, we're just thinking." Now I know she wasn't just thinking. She was testing the waters. The first direct conversation about adoption came one night after an argument with Esteban. He had promised to take Lucas for a weekend and canceled at the last minute. Mariana was furious. Lucas pretended he didn't care and locked himself in his room to watch videos. When he fell asleep, Mariana sat with me in the living room. "Have you ever thought about making it official?" "What thing?" She looked at me with a mixture of fear and hope. "The Lucas thing." I didn't answer because I didn't understand immediately. Adopting him. Legally. The word hung in the air. Adopting him. I felt a strong emotion, but also an immediate fear. "Mariana, I don't want to pressure you." That sentence would be one of many I would later remember with pain. But he already sees you as his dad. She continued. "You're the one who's there. You're the one who goes to the meetings. You're the one who takes him to the doctor. Esteban shows up when he wants and disappears when he gets tired. That doesn't mean it's simple. I'm not saying it's simple. I'm saying it would be fair." I got up and walked a few steps. "Lucas knows you're thinking about this." Not directly. And Esteban. Her face closed. Esteban has no right to block Lucas's stability. He's his biological father. When it suits him, that doesn't change the fact that he legally exists. Mariana rubbed her forehead. "Daniel, if something happens to me, Lucas could be left in the middle of people who haven't taken care of him. Do you want that? Don't use that." "I'm not using it. It's real." I sat down again. I need to think, of course, but in her eyes I saw disappointment, as if thinking was already a form of rejection. I slept little that night because, yes, I loved Lucas. Not as an idea, not as an extension of Mariana, not as proof that I was a good man. I loved him because I'd seen him grow, because I knew he hated cooked carrots, but he would eat them if they were mixed with rice, because I knew that when he was scared he would touch his left ear, because I knew he asked deep questions right before bed, because I knew that even if he pretended to be fine, if Esteban canceled a visit, he would be more irritable for 2 days. But adopting wasn't just feeling, it was legally promising, it was accepting real responsibilities, it was entering a structure that didn't fall apart because a marriage failed. At that moment, I didn't think my marriage was going to fail. That was my mistake, or maybe my innocence. During the following weeks, Mariana was patient, too patient, if I look at it now. She didn't pressure me with screams. She sent me articles about blended families. She talked to me about security. She told me she didn't want Lucas to continue depending on an inconsistent man. She reminded me that I was already doing the work. You're not getting into something new. You're already there. We're just protecting what exists. I want to talk to a lawyer. I think that's perfect. And with a child therapist, if necessary. I don't want Lucas to think he has to accept this so he doesn't hurt me. Lucas wants this. You don't know that if we haven't explained it to him well. Mariana took my hand. Daniel, he loves you and I am. That's why I want to do it right. She smiled. That's why it's you. Another phrase that at the time sounded like love and later like a tool. We spoke with a family lawyer recommended by a colleague of Mariana's. The consultation was proper. The lawyer explained that an adoption was not a nice symbol. It created rights and obligations. It changed responsibilities, depending on the biological father's situation. It required consents, evaluations, documents, and judicial review. The child's best interest was central. Don't take this as an emotional formality. This is serious. I nodded. Mariana, too. The lawyer looked at me directly. You must be sure that you want to legally assume that role beyond your marriage to the mother. That phrase made me uncomfortable. Beyond my marriage. Yes, the parental relationship is not simply annulled because a couple separates. Mariana squeezed my hand under the table. That's not going to happen. The lawyer didn't smile. Still, it must be considered. I looked at Mariana. She seemed calm, almost offended by the possibility. We're fine, she assured. I believed her. That was the moment that haunted me the most afterwards, because she had already started talking to a friend about separation. I didn't know it yet. Days later, Mariana said we should talk to Lucas. We did it one afternoon after dinner, without exaggerated ceremony, without gifts, without theatrical promises. Lucas looked at us both with suspicion. I'm in trouble. I didn't answer. Nothing like that. Mariana took a breath. We want to talk about something important, something that has to do with family and with the law. Lucas frowned. The law. I intervened. It's not bad. Your mom and I have talked about the possibility of me legally adopting you, if you want it to, and if everything is done correctly. He stood still. Adopting me means that legally I would be your dad too. He looked at Mariana. And Esteban. Mariana swallowed. Esteban will always be part of your story, but he hasn't been there as you need. Lucas looked down. I didn't want that conversation to turn into a judgment against Esteban. You don't have to answer now, nor do you have to say yes to make us feel good. If it confuses you, we could talk about it. If you want to ask questions, you ask. Lucas moved his fingers on the table. If you sign that, then you'd be my dad, even if you and mom get mad. The question left me breathless. Mariana closed her eyes for a second. I answered carefully. The idea of an adoption is that it doesn't depend on an argument. That's why it's something serious. I don't want to promise you something without understanding it well. Lucas looked at me. You want to? I felt the whole room shrink to his eyes. Yes, but I want you to want it too for you. Not out of fear. He nodded. I want you to be my dad. Mariana started to cry. I didn't because I didn't feel it, because I was focused on not turning his answer into a burden. Then we continued talking step by step. Lucas got up, walked towards me, and hugged me. He didn't say dad. He didn't have to. After that conversation, the process moved forward. Initial documents, meetings, identification papers, histories, certificates, consents of intent, questions. Mariana seemed excited, almost relieved. Finally, Lucas will be protected. I also felt something similar to peace. I believed we were formalizing a family that already existed. I believed that Esteban, with all his inconsistency, would have to decide whether to give in, participate, or face his own absence. I believed that Mariana and I were more united than ever. But after the first important signing, something changed. Not suddenly, not like in the movies. It changed in details. Mariana started to protect her phone more. Before, she would leave it on the table, in the kitchen, in the living room. Now, she even took it to the bathroom. She said she was dealing with work matters, but I noticed that she would close apps when I got close. She started going out more to run errands. Long errands, without bags when she came back. When I asked her, she would answer tiredly, "Daniel, I don't have to report every move to you." That surprised me because I wasn't controlling, I never had been. But suddenly, any normal question seemed like an accusation. She also started talking about the adoption process with distance. Before, she would ask every day if there was any news. Afterwards, when I mentioned a pending document, she would say the same thing. "Yes, we'll see later. It's not urgent." It is, but I don't want everything to revolve around that. Mariana, you pushed for it, and now you seem obsessed. I fell silent. Obsessed. I had agreed to enter a huge process because she asked me to. Now, following it seriously was an obsession. The first clear sign with Esteban happened one night. Mariana received a message and smiled. Not a normal smile, a quick, hidden smile. When she noticed I saw her, she put the phone face down. "Everything okay?" Yes. Who is it? No one important. No one important is a phrase that always announces someone important. I didn't insist. Not yet. A week later, Lucas mentioned something without realizing it. Mom said Esteban might come to see me more. I left the plate in the sink. Oh, yeah. She says he's changing. Mariana came in right at that moment. Lucas, go finish your homework. He looked at us both. But I'm almost done. Now, please. Lucas left. I waited for him to go up. Esteban is changing. Mariana crossed her arms. He wants to get closer to his son. Right now. What does that mean? It means we're in the middle of an adoption process. That doesn't take away his right to want to see him. I didn't say that. I said the timing is curious. Don't start. That phrase appeared like a closing door. Since when have you been talking to him? Since always, Daniel. We have a son. You know what I mean? I'm not going to discuss this. She left. I was left with the feeling of having touched a live wire. 2 weeks later, Mariana asked me to talk. Lucas was at a friend's house. She chose that moment. I understood that too. Afterwards, she sat in front of me with a seriousness I hadn't seen since our worst arguments. I'm not happy. The phrase fell cleanly, without warning, without context. I felt my body take a moment to react. What? I've been feeling it for a while. For a while, when she looked at her hands? I don't know Mariana. Months. Months. The word hit against everything we had just done. Months. And you asked me to start an adoption. She looked up, offended. Don't mix Lucas into this. You mix him in. No, the adoption is about him. Our marriage is another thing. I laughed without air. You can't be serious, Daniel. He still needs you, and you waited for me to sign important documents to tell me you wanted a divorce. Her eyes filled with tears. Do you really think I did that for personal gain? I didn't answer quickly because I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe no. But the exact moment she chose to speak was a huge shadow on the table. I don't know what to believe now. She cried. I've been feeling lonely for a while. Before or after you asked me to adopt your son. Our son. The correction hit me. Our son. That phrase would have excited me before. Now it sounded like a rope around my neck. Don't use that now. It's not ours now. I'm not saying that. Then don't act like the adoption was a trap. It was. She stood up. I can't believe you're asking me that. I can't believe you'd ask me to adopt and then ask for a divorce. I didn't plan it this way. So how? She didn't answer. She just cried. I slept in the guest room that night, where I tried to sleep because my head wouldn't stop. Months. She said she had been unhappy for months. Months was before the consultation with a lawyer, before talking to Lucas, before the boy hugged me, asking if I would be his dad, even if his mother and I got angry before I signed. The next day, Mariana acted as if we could separate everything into perfect boxes. I want this to be mature. I don't want fights. I don't want Lucas to suffer. Lucas is already going to suffer, isn't he? If we do it right. Doing it right was hiding from me that you wanted a divorce while asking me to take on a permanent legal role. I didn't hide it. I was confused. Confused is not the same as silent. I thought that if we talked before, you would push Lucas away. That phrase made me turn. What? She froze as if she had just said more than she wanted to. I just repeat that. I was afraid that if you knew I had doubts about us, you wouldn't want to go through with the adoption. Histoire de hair. So you did think about it. Not as manipulation. It doesn't matter what you call it. You asked for a legal promise while hiding information that could change my decision. Because Lucas loves you and I love him. That's precisely the problem. She cried again. Don't punish him for my mistake. Don't use the child to close a conversation about your decisions. Her face changed. For the first time, she looked at me with fear. Not physical fear. Fear of losing control of the narrative. During the following days, I moved as if I were underwater. I worked, answered emails, took Lucas to school, prepared simple meals, spoke to Mariana as little as possible, and tried not to break down in front of the child. Lucas noticed. You and Mom are fighting. I closed the fridge slowly. We're talking about difficult things. Because of me, no. The answer came out quickly because it was the only thing he needed to hear. None of this is your fault, but you've been weird since the adoption thing. I knelt in front of him. Listen to me carefully. What I feel for you didn't start with papers and no adult fight means you did something wrong. His eyes filled with tears. Do you still want to be my dad? I felt something break in me. Mariana was in the hallway. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, still listening. I want you to be safe and well, and I want to do things correctly so I don't hurt you more. Lucas frowned. That's not a yes. I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't love him, but because I had just understood that any yes I gave without reviewing what Mariana had done could become another trap. Lucas moved away and went up to his room. Mariana followed me to the kitchen. You just broke his heart. I looked at her with a calm I didn't feel. No, you put his heart in the middle of a lie, and now you're upset that I don't know how to hold it without cutting my hands. She didn't say anything. That night, I started checking dates. I didn't hack anything. I didn't steal passwords. I didn't do anything illegal. But we had a family tablet synchronized with some emails and calendar messages. We also had printed documents from the process, consultation dates, and conversations that Mariana had left open in a shared account. First, I opened the calendar. Initial consultation with the lawyer. Tuesday, 7th. First serious conversation about adoption. 2 weeks before. Message from Esteban to Mariana the day before that conversation. I couldn't read the whole thing there, but I saw the beginning. We need to talk about Lucas and us. About us. Esteban didn't write like that for school matters. I kept checking. There was an email forwarded to a friend of Mariana's, Patricia. The subject said I'm lost. I shouldn't have read it maybe, but it was in a shared account and my marriage had just become a minefield. The email was from weeks before the consultation with the lawyer. Mariana wrote that she didn't know if she wanted to stay with me. She said I was a good man and that I loved Lucas, but that she felt her life was trapped in a stability she might have chosen out of fear. Then she mentioned Esteban. She said he had written to her again, that he said he had changed, that she didn't know what she felt. The last part left me cold. Before making any decision, I need to make sure Lucas isn't left unprotected. Daniel is the only real father he's had. If I can close the adoption thing before we separate, at least Lucas is protected and I'm not left alone with everything. I read that sentence several times. I'm not left alone with everything. It didn't say Lucas shouldn't lose me. It didn't say I deserved to be recognized. It didn't say we were a family. It said she wouldn't be left alone with everything. I kept scrolling down. The friend replied something that sounded like common sense. Don't you think you should tell him you're thinking about separating before you ask for something so big? Mariana replied. If I tell him now, he might back out. And Lucas needs stability. I can't risk it. I felt a chill in my chest. The first proof wasn't an interpretation, it was a sentence. If I tell him now, he might back out. That's when I understood that the adoption hadn't been just a promise of love. For her, it had also been a strategy. And the cruelest part was at the center of that strategy was the same child I did love. I didn't sleep that night, not because I wasn't sleepy. My body was exhausted. My head was heavy, my eyes were burning, and I had been running on coffee, tension, and half-answers for days. But every time I tried to close my eyes, I read Mariana's sentence again. If I tell him now, he might back out. As if I were an obstacle that had to be handled carefully, as if my consent were a door she had to cross before I knew that on the other side there was a divorce. As if my love for Lucas were true, yes, but also useful. That's what broke me the most. Because if I had found a message where Mariana said she no longer loved me, it would have hurt. If I had seen that she was talking to Esteban, I would have felt betrayed. If I had discovered that she was planning to divorce, it would have been devastating. But this was different. This wasn't just an emotional affair or a marital crisis. This was taking the purest bond one had in that house, my relationship with Lucas, and putting it at the service of a plan they didn't tell me about. I sat with the tablet in front of me, motionless. Then I started saving evidence. I didn't scream. I didn't go wake up Mariana. I didn't go into her room to demand explanations. I didn't want to give her the chance to erase, deny, or turn my reaction into the problem. I saved screenshots of the email. I saved dates. I saved Patricia's message. I saved Mariana's reply. I saved the calendar entry where the consultation with the lawyer appeared. I saved the notification of Esteban's message. Then I opened a folder on my computer. First I named it Lucas, and I stared at the name. I didn't want the folder that contained his mother's betrayal to bear only his name. I changed it. Adoption and divorce. Cold. Exact. Necessary. The next day, I made an appointment with another lawyer, one that hadn't been recommended by Mariana. I didn't want to sit down again with someone who, although professional, had come into our lives through my wife's channel. I needed an independent opinion. I got an appointment for the next day. In the meantime, Mariana tried to act as if the world could be divided into two separate conversations. In the morning, while Lucas was having breakfast, she spoke with a softness that I found insulting. I have to go out for a while today. I'm going to see about some things for the divorce. Lucas looked up. Divorce? Mariana froze. Me too. We hadn't agreed on how to say it. We hadn't spoken with a therapist. We hadn't prepared anything, and she had just dropped the word on the table as if Lucas were too young to understand it. But Lucas understood. He was 10 years old. He wasn't a baby. He had already experienced enough of Esteban's disappearances to recognize when an adult was about to move from their place. Mom, are you guys going to separate? Mariana opened her mouth, but couldn't find a clean sentence. I put down the cup. Lucas, we're going to talk about that calmly. Not in the middle of breakfast, and not with loose phrases. He looked at me, but yes, he wasn't asking. He was confirming. Mariana started to cry. Love, this doesn't change what we feel for you. Lucas squeezed a spoon. That's what they always say. The phrase left us in silence. That's what they always say. I don't know if he was thinking about Esteban. I guess so. Every time Esteban canceled, he also said that nothing changed, that he loved him, that they would see each other soon, that it had been a work problem, that next time he would. Children learn quickly that nice words don't always protect. I knelt next to Lucas. You have a right to be angry and confused. But one thing I do want you to hear now. None of this is your fault. It's because of the adoption. Mariana covered her mouth. I felt like looking at her, but I forced myself to stay with Lucas. It's not because of you, but it happened afterwards. I couldn't lie to him. Yes, it happened afterwards. That's why the adults have to solve it well without putting you in the middle. Lucas got up from the table. I want to go to my room. Mariana tried to touch him. Lucas, he moved away. He didn't go up the stairs. Mariana looked at me with tears. Do something. I looked at her as if I didn't recognize her. Now you wanted to fix what you blurted out without thinking. It wasn't my intention. That seems to be the motto for everything you do lately. Her face hardened. Don't start. You already started. We didn't argue anymore because Lucas was upstairs, but that morning confirmed something. Mariana hadn't just calculated things. She was also losing control of her own plan. She thought she could handle me. She thought she could handle Esteban. She thought she could handle the adoption, the divorce, the child's pain, and everyone's narrative. But Lucas wasn't a still piece. He was a child who listened, who connected dates, who understood more than she wanted. The lawyer I consulted was named Irene. She received me with a calm seriousness. I brought her copies of the signed documents, the calendar, the emails, the screenshots, and a summary of dates. I didn't try to sound like a perfect victim. I told the truth. I love the child. She nodded. That's clear, but I think my wife asked me to proceed with the adoption knowing she was planning to divorce. I passed her the screenshots. Irene read in silence. She didn't make dramatic gestures. That reassured me. Professionals who overreact usually scare me more than help me. When she finished, she put the papers on the table. This is complex. I know. Is the adoption finalized? No, there are initial documents, consent of intent, records, but no final resolution. That changes a lot. I felt like I was breathing for the first time in days. I can stop the process. You can request that it be reviewed or suspend your participation before finalization, especially if you consider that your consent was affected by withheld information. But don't just think in terms of winning or losing. There's a minor here with a real emotional bond. I don't want to abandon him. Then, we need to separate two things. 1, your wife's manipulation. 2, the bond with Lucas. If you mix them in an impulsive reaction, she can use it against you and the child can be destroyed. She's already telling me that if I don't continue, I never loved him. Irene looked up. That's emotional pressure. It doesn't mean it's true. I saved that phrase like, who saves a glass of water and the money? I asked because I found messages where she talked about not being left alone with everything. If the process were completed, there could be permanent and financial obligations. But since it's not finalized, we need to review what stage it's at and what each party has declared. The messages can be relevant to show intent and lack of transparency. I don't want Lucas to think I'm rejecting him. So don't disappear, but don't sign anything else without guidance. All contact, all agreements, all steps in writing, and if possible with the support of a child therapist or family mediator. I nodded. She's talking to Esteban. You have proof, some notifications, suspicions, dates. Look for facts, not intuitions, without illegally invading privacy. If there are shared devices, family emails, or messages that she herself left accessible, save what's relevant, but don't do anything crazy. Don't become the villain of the story, she can tell. That phrase also stuck with me. Don't become the villain of the story, she can tell, because Mariana was already trying to write it. When I got home, she was in the living room, checking her phone. She locked it when she saw me. I went to a lawyer. She tensed up. What for? To understand what I signed and what I can do. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yes. Instead of thinking about Lucas, you're thinking about protecting yourself. I'm thinking about Lucas. That's why I'm not going to make decisions under a lie. She stood up. There was no lie. There was fear. There was an email where you wrote that if you told me the truth, I might back out. Her face lost its color. You went through my things. It was in a shared account on the family tablet. I didn't have to look too hard. That was private. So was my right to know you were thinking about divorce before you asked me for an adoption? Mariana breathed with difficulty. You don't understand. Explain it to me. I was afraid of being left alone with everything. I did understand that. You wrote it. I didn't say it like that. You wrote it like that. Lucas needed security. Lucas needed honest adults. She put her hands to her head. What did you want me to do? Tell you I was confused and risk you pushing him away? Yes. She looked at me as if my answer were impossible. Yes. Yes. Because then my decision would have been real. Maybe I would have continued. Maybe I would have said we needed to wait. Maybe we would have sought therapy, but I would have decided with the truth. He loves you, and I love him. That's why this is so serious. If you love him, go through with the adoption. The phrase came out too quickly, too cleanly, as if everything was leading to the point she had prepared. No, she froze. No, I'm not signing anything else until a lawyer reviews everything and until Lucas has independent emotional support. You're going to destroy him. No, I'm going to prevent you from continuing to use his fear to push me. Now I'm a manipulator. I didn't answer. Her face changed when she noticed my silence. Daniel, when did you decide to divorce? There's no date. You're lying. I was confused. Before the consultation with the lawyer, she looked away. Mariana. Yes, the answer hit me. Even though I already knew. Before talking to Lucas, she didn't answer. God, I didn't do it to hurt you. You did it to protect yourself. To protect Lucas. To protect yourself. That's what you wrote. She cried, but this time I didn't move. I didn't hug her. I didn't console her. I didn't make her cry in the center. The next day, Esteban showed up. Not in person, first in messages. Mariana left the phone on the table while she was preparing something. A notification came through. I didn't read the whole thing, but I saw the name. Esteban and a phrase. Have you told him that we talked? When Mariana came back, she saw my face. She quickly grabbed the phone. Don't start. Since when have you been talking to Esteban about you guys? We're talking about Lucas. The message said us. I'm not going to argue about every word. I am, Daniel. You're acting like you own Lucas. I felt a cold anger. Don't use that phrase with me. It's true. It's not the phrase you need to make me look dangerous when I ask for clarity. That night, with Irene's guidance, I asked Mariana in writing that all communication about Lucas, adoption, and separation be done by email or saved messages. I also asked to pause any step of the process until mediation. Mariana replied with a long message. I find it cruel that you're turning your love for Lucas into a legal matter. He sees you as his father, and he doesn't deserve for you to abandon him because you're hurt with me. I saved a screenshot. I replied, I'm not abandoning Lucas. I'm pausing a process you asked me to start while you were hiding that you planned to divorce. My bond with him is real. The way you tried to turn it into an obligation without complete information was not. She didn't reply for hours. Then she wrote, I thought you were a better man. That phrase was a trap. I didn't answer. During the following weeks, the battle moved in several directions. First, The adoption process was temporarily suspended. My lawyer filed a formal request to review my consent before any progress, attaching dates and communications. It wasn't a war against Lucas. It was a protection against a decision made with manipulated information. Second, we asked for family mediation. Mariana refused at first. I don't need a stranger to tell me how to protect my son. Irene replied in writing that precisely for Lucas's well-being, the conversations had to move out of the realm of accusations and blame. Third, I asked for Lucas to have psychological support, not to get statements, not to use against his mother, but for him to have a space to talk without feeling like he was betraying anyone. Mariana agreed only when her own lawyer told her that refusing would look bad. That's when I understood something else. Many times Mariana didn't do the right thing because it was right. She did it when not doing it could harm her. The first mediation was tense. Mariana came with her lawyer. I came with Irene. Esteban wasn't summoned yet, although his name appeared in every shadow of the conversation. The mediator began by clarifying that the focus was Lucas, but that the facts surrounding the adoption and separation also had to be reviewed. Mariana spoke first. Daniel has been important to Lucas. No one denies that, but now he's using his pain against a child who is not to blame. I didn't move. Irene put a hand on my documents to make me wait. Mariana continued. I asked for the adoption because Lucas loves him, because he needed stability, not because I wanted to take advantage. That my marriage ended afterwards is painful, but it doesn't change what Daniel agreed to be. The mediator looked at me. Daniel, I breathed. I'm not denying my bond with Lucas. I'm saying that I agreed to move forward, believing my marriage was stable and that Mariana was telling me the whole truth. Afterwards, I discovered that she was already talking about separation before she asked me to move forward, and that she was afraid I would back out if she told me. That changes the context of my consent. Mariana shook her head. I was confused. Irene slid a copy of the email. The mediator read it. Mariana looked down. The mediator spoke calmly. This email was sent before the legal consultation on adoption. Mariana spoke softly. Yes, and at that time you were already contemplating separating. Not definitively, but you considered that if Daniel knew, he might change his decision. Mariana pressed her lips together. I was afraid. Afraid of what? That Lucas would lose the only constant father he has had. The mediator looked at the email again. Here you also mention not being left alone with everything. Mariana closed her eyes. She didn't answer. That silence was the first public crack in her version. It wasn't a happy victory, because while she was being exposed, I was thinking about Lucas at school, not knowing that unknown adults were reading sentences where his life appeared mixed with fear, money, and separation. Afterwards, they talked about Esteban. Mariana tried to downplay it. Esteban has wanted to get closer to Lucas. That has nothing to do with Daniel. Irene brought out the dates. Messages from Esteban before the adoption request. Long calls on days when Mariana said she was with Patricia. Notifications. An email where Mariana asked her friend if it was absurd to think that Esteban might have changed. The mediator asked the question that Mariana didn't want to hear. You were exploring a possible reconciliation with the biological father while asking Daniel to legally assume the paternal role. Mariana turned red. It wasn't a reconciliation. What was a confusion? The word no longer saved her. Confusion, used too many times, starts to sound like a strategy. Esteban was summoned to a later session because his position mattered. If he wanted to regain his presence as a biological father, he had to say he was willing to take it on. He arrived with a confidence that bothered me immediately. Not because I wanted to fight with him, but because I had seen him fail so many times and still walk in as if the problem was that others hadn't given him space. I am his father. No one can erase that. He looked at me when he said it. I didn't answer. The mediator asked, "Are you willing to assume a stable regimen of visits, financial support, school decisions, and medical responsibilities?" Yes, of course, but we have to take it slowly. What does slowly mean? Well, I can't change my life overnight. Irene took a note. The mediator continued. Are you up to date with financial support? Esteban looked at Mariana. We've had informal agreements. Mariana looked down. Irene asked about the canceled visits in recent months. Esteban got upset. That's irrelevant. That's when I spoke. It is relevant because Lucas is not a title you claim when it's convenient. It's homework, fever, school, birthdays, schedules, and disappointments. Esteban looked at me with contempt. You're not his father. The phrase hurt, even though I knew it might come. Then, you assume what you claim to be. He fell silent. Are you going to take him to the doctor when he has a fever? Are you going to sign authorizations? Are you going to pay for overdue activities? Are you going to show up at games? Are you going to answer when he calls you crying because you promised to go and you didn't? Are you going to be there on the boring days, not just the days when you want to prove you exist? Esteban clenched his jaw. You have no right to talk to me like that. Lucas, he would have the right to ask you that. I'm just saving him the trouble. The mediator intervened to lower the tension, but the point was made. Esteban wanted to regain his place, not necessarily the burden. Mariana realized it too. I saw it in her face. For months, she had imagined a way out where I was legally bound. Esteban would return emotionally, and she wouldn't be left alone with the hard part. But when Esteban had to talk about concrete responsibilities, he started to backpedal. After that session, Mariana waited for me outside. That was unnecessary. It wasn't the first time someone had asked him for details. You humiliated him? I asked him questions that I have answered with actions for years. Daniel, not everything is about competing. I'm not competing. I'm tired of everyone wanting the name of father without carrying the weight. She cried. And what do you want? The question was harder than it seemed. I want Lucas not to be used. No one is using him. I looked at her. You still can't tell the whole truth. And what is it according to you? That you wanted me to be secured before you left? That you wanted Esteban to be able to get closer without it meaning losing my support? That you confuse stability for Lucas with a policy for yourself? We don't use words like abandonment to describe adult decisions. Mariana cried. I nodded. One afternoon after a third session, Lucas asked to talk to me. We were in the car. Mariana wasn't there. Mom says you don't want to sign because you're mad at her. I felt like hitting the steering wheel. I didn't. I'm mad at her. Yes, but that doesn't mean what I feel for you is fake. So why won't you sign? I breathed slowly. Because signing something like that has to be done with the truth. And the adults didn't do things right. I didn't want it. His voice broke. I know. I wasn't enough. It hurt me so much that I had to close my eyes for a second. Lucas, look at me. He looked at me. You don't have to be enough for adults to be honest. None of this happened because you failed. You didn't do anything wrong, but if you don't sign, Esteban comes back. Esteban can be in your life if he learns to be there properly. That doesn't erase what you and I have been through. He says you want to take me away. I don't want to take you away from anyone, and I don't want anyone to use me to get out of their responsibilities. Lucas cried. I didn't hug him right away. I waited for him to come closer. He did. He leaned towards me and cried against my shoulder. I don't want to lose you. That's where I almost gave in to everything. Almost. Because love sometimes pushes you to accept any condition to make a child stop crying. But that would have been another lie. I don't want to lose you either. That's why I'm going to fight for a healthy way to stay in your life, not for a way based on deceit. I don't know if he understood completely, but he hugged me tighter. The resolution didn't come quickly. Nothing in these processes comes quickly when there are children, emotions, and documents mixed together. The adoption was formally paused and then withdrawn from review due to lack of full consent in the context presented. Not because a judge said I didn't want Lucas, not because someone decided my bond didn't matter, but because the process couldn't move forward as if there hadn't been relevant concealment before my signature. Mariana tried to fight that. Her lawyer insisted that Lucas's well-being should outweigh my feelings. Irene replied that precisely Lucas's well-being demanded that an adoption not be born from a lie. A temporary contact arrangement between I could no longer say that the adoption and divorce were unrelated without the dates contradicting her. She could no longer present Esteban as a recovered father without him having to talk about money, schedules, and real presence. Esteban wasn't comfortable either. Being forced to take on a concrete plan, he started to fail again. He was late for a visit. He canceled another. He said work had him complicated. Lucas wasn't surprised, and that was the saddest part. One afternoon, Mariana called me crying. I didn't answer. She sent a message. Esteban canceled again. Lucas doesn't want to leave his room. I read the message and felt a horrible mixture of anger and pity. I replied, tell him I'm available to talk if he wants. I'm not going to show up without him asking. Half an hour later, Lucas called me. Can you come? It was not because of Mariana, because of him. I found him sitting on the stairs with red eyes. Mariana was in the kitchen, destroyed. I didn't look at her too much. Lucas got up and walked towards me. He said he was coming this time. I know. I didn't want to believe him, but I did. There was no answer that would fix that. I'm sorry it happened. You're going to get tired too. I don't want to promise you things that depend on lawyers or fighting adults, but if I can promise you something, if I can't be there, I'll tell you. I won't disappear without an explanation. He looked at me. You told me that when I was little, and I'm still trying to keep it. That day Mariana didn't interrupt. She didn't use my presence to say, see, you're his father. Sign. She just stayed quiet. Maybe for the first time she saw what she had put at risk. Weeks later we had the last strong conversation. It was in mediation. Mariana was exhausted. Me too. Irene had made it clear that the adoption process, as it was planned, was not going to continue. The contact with Lucas would continue under therapeutic agreement and review. The financial obligations would be linked to what legally existed, not to the manipulated intention. Esteban would have to assume his own plan of responsibilities if he wanted to claim presence. Mariana looked at me with a mixture of hatred and pain. So, everything you said you felt for him was a lie. I felt that sentence try to open my chest, but I was no longer defenseless. No, precisely because it was true. I'm not going to let you use it to cover a lie. You're punishing him. I'm not preventing him from growing up believing that love is obtained by deceiving someone. He chose you, and you used that choice to push me before you told me the truth. She cried. I was afraid. Me too, but my fear didn't give me the right to lie to you. I didn't want to be alone. That's what you wrote. She covered her face. It was a horrible sentence. It was an honest sentence. That's where she stopped defending herself. She didn't apologize cleanly that day. Mariana wasn't like that. First, she needed to lose all the arguments. But she said something that at least stopped sounding like a strategy. I ruined it. I didn't answer because she had ruined it. The divorce went its course. It wasn't friendly, but it wasn't a total war either. Mariana tried several times to regain emotional control using Lucas, but the mediation and the therapist limited that a lot. Every time she wrote sentences like if you really loved him, Irene would respond with cold, precise language. That frustrated her. It saved me. Lucas and I continued to see each other at first, 2 afternoons a month and some calls. Then a little more, according to professional recommendation and according to how he handled it. I didn't want to become another adult who promised absolute permanence and then broke against the court. I preferred to be consistent in the small things. I would take him for a snack after therapy. I would help him with math on video call. I went to one of his games, sitting far from Mariana and Esteban. Esteban arrived late and left early. I stayed until the end. Lucas saw me on the way out and didn't say anything. He just raised his hand. That was enough. One day after a game, we walked to the car. Lucas had the backpack over one shoulder. Can I still call you Dad sometimes? The question pierced me. Only if you want to. Not because you're afraid of losing me. I want to. I swallowed. Then yes, even if there's no paper. The paper matters for many things, but what we've been through doesn't disappear because the adults did things wrong. Lucas nodded. Mom says she was wrong. I didn't answer quickly. I hope she really understands. Me too. We kept walking. Are you mad at me? I stopped. Never. Sometimes I feel like if I hadn't wanted you to sign, nothing would have happened. I knelt in front of him. Lucas, listen to me. You didn't cause this. You wanted to feel safe. That's not wrong. The adults are responsible for giving you security with truth, not with pressure. If anyone failed, it wasn't you. He cried silently. I hugged him. That was one of the few moments in this whole story where I felt that despite everything, I had done something right. Tom didn't fix everything. That would be a lie. My relationship with Lucas was marked by decisions that we didn't make ourselves. Mariana had to face the fact that her plan not only hurt me, it also damaged her son's trust. Esteban was exposed as someone who wanted the place when it sounded nice, but not always the burden when it became daily. I was left with a difficult wound to explain because I lost a marriage, but I couldn't live that grief like any other divorce. There was a child in the middle whom I still loved. Every legal advance protected me, but it could also hurt him. Every limit I set against Mariana, I had to check if it bounced back on Lucas. Every time they told me if you love him, sign, I had to remind myself that true love does not demand blindness. In the end, my decision was clear. I did not continue with the adoption under that process. Not because Lucas wasn't enough, not because my love had faded, not because I wanted to punish Mariana. I didn't continue because an adoption must be born from complete truth, not from a manipulated calendar. It must be a free promise, not a signature obtained before confessing a divorce. It must protect the child, not secure an adult a financial net before looking back at the ex. But I didn't abandon Lucas either. That's what Mariana couldn't use against me, even though she tried. I didn't disappear. I didn't block him. I didn't tell him he was nothing to me anymore. I didn't allow my anger against his mother to turn into coldness against him. I remained present in the way I could, with limits, with professional support, and with a clarity I didn't have before. A year later, Lucas sent me a message on his birthday. Thanks for coming. I know everything was weird, but I'm glad you didn't leave completely. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I replied, I'm glad too. None of what happened was your fault. He sent a heart. Nothing more was needed. Mariana, months later, apologized to me in an email. It wasn't perfect. She still tried to explain too much, but there was a different sentence. I thought that ensuring stability justified hiding my doubt from you. Now I understand that stability built on a lie also breaks. I didn't reply right away. When I did, I just wrote, Lucas deserved the truth. Me too. She replied, I know. Maybe she knew. Maybe she was just starting to. It was no longer my job to decide. The battle didn't teach me that Lucas wasn't mine. It taught me something more difficult. It taught me that the love for a child can be real when the adult who asked for that love was lying. It taught me that protecting a child doesn't mean allowing them to be used as an emotional lock. It taught me that a signature can be born from the heart, but if someone gets it by hiding the truth, it can also become a trap. I did love that child. That's why I didn't allow his mother to turn my love into a signature obtained with lies.